from an illuminated manuscript that was produced, this particular one was produced in the mid-15th century, but the story comes from the 14th century. It's from the Decameron, which was written by Boccaccio, and the Decameron was a series of 100 stories, and the premise was that 10 people had gone to a villa outside of Florence to escape the plague that was sweeping through Europe at the time. So this was 1348, the plague. So this is the kind of story that was written in the Decameron. And it's also possibly an image that, you know how when you look at an image and then I explain it a little bit and you go, oh, okay, so that's not maybe quite as weird, or it sort of all becomes, you know, it explains itself. This might be the other way around. I don't know. So you can see on the right hand side of an image, there's a lady who is plummeting to the ground. I'm not entirely sure whether she's actually going to do herself very much damage because she doesn't seem to have fallen very far. It's a nice soft landing, but the perspective is a bit weird. If you look to the left hand side of the image, you can see the table looks as though it's about to tilt everything from it. So, okay, two parts to this story. Has she fallen out the window? Has she been pushed out of the window? Has she jumped out of the window? Well, the key to this lies in this first part of the story, which is over on the left-hand side. And what a story this is. So this lady in the green, you can see that she's sitting having dinner with her husband. She has been a bit of a naughty girl. She has been carrying on with her husband's best friend. For a while they got away with it, but then the husband found out and flew into a rage and was extremely unhappy about the whole thing, as you know, fair enough. And so he ended up killing his best friend under the cover of a tournament. Under the cover of a tournament. That didn't come out right. It wasn't an enclosed tournament. I don't know what the tournament was, but in the guise of a tournament. So there was a big tournament, and it was an excuse for him to fight his best friend, and he killed him. And then what he did, and history doesn't record what the spectators saw or how they reacted, but what he did was after he'd killed him, he cut out his heart and brought it back to his chef and said, I just went hunting and got this lovely and killed a lovely wild boar. I'm hoping that you can make a delicious dish from this wild boar heart. And the chef went, oh yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. And so the chef did his best and he prepared a delicious meal. You can see it here on this plate, rather obviously a heart shape. And by the time dinner came round, your man says, oh, actually, I'm not terribly hungry, but, you know, here you are, wife. Why don't you enjoy this delicious dish? It's a new one that chef has prepared. And so she's, oh, God, well, that's fine. I'm starving. I'll eat it all up. And so off she goes. She's like, this is really good. Oh, yeah. And he says, oh, at the end, when she's finished it all, he says, oh, so you found that delicious, did you? Enjoyed that? And she said, yes, I really enjoyed that. And her husband says, well, that's not a surprise. I suppose it's obvious that you're going to enjoy him as much now as you did when he was alive. I know. And so she obviously then is completely distraught and throws herself out of a window. And her husband flees the country, and who knows, Boccaccio doesn't bother with the details, with the post-trauma details. But that is what this story is about. So this is from an illuminated manuscript, mid-15th century, that tells all of the stories of the Decameron. There are some great stories, by the way. And this was made for Philip the Good, who was the Duke of Burgundy. This particular illuminated manuscript, it's now in Paris, I think. Yes, I'm sure it is. It's in Paris. But Duke of Burgundy, we've met one of the Dukes of Burgundy before. Do you remember last week, the Annunciation? Do you remember Mad Queen Joanna, who got Jesus sliding into her ear? She was married to this Duke of Burgundy's great grandson. So Philip the Fair. So this is for Philip the Good, and the great grandson who married the Mad Queen was Philip the Fair. See what you learn on these things. And moving on. Okay, right. This is an image that when I saw it the other day, and I was genuinely, what? What is that? 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 And I couldn't get my head around this image at all. And then I did a little bit of digging, and I realised that it's in fact, well, obviously it's a close up, and you might be able to make it out. And maybe the image that I was looking at wasn't quite as defined, but in fact it's from this, which is part of an altarpiece by Carlo Crivelli. So the offending bit, so this bit is over on the right hand side. It's where you can see Mary Magdalene, so the figure to the far right of the image, and so it's where she's holding Christ's hand up. So this is an entombment, so she's holding Christ's hand up, and obviously Carlo Crivelli has gone, let's just go back to this close up because it's just has gone a bit mad with the sort of the gapiness of the wound. Hasn't bothered so much with the blood. Obviously that would kind of, I don't know, ruin the look or something. But yeah, so that's from here, which is an entombment, which is, let me just show you, part of a wider altarpiece, or a bigger altarpiece that was made for a church in central Italy, in Fabriano. This is now in Milan, in the museum in Milan. So Carlo Crivelli, this is in fact the last recorded work that Crivelli created. So this was dated to 1493. He died in sort of 1494, 1495. It really bears his trademark though. It's or all of his trademarks. The hands, the kind of spindly hands, sort of, and the little fingers, quite distinctive quite often in Crivelli. This sort of weirdly, I'm doing this like you can see my little fingers, but this sort of weirdly angular little fingers, and the whole thing he paints in quite a linear fashion, but he also paints detail fantastically. You can see, I think, in this image to the left hand side, you've got a book and a candle, which are just lovely details, and they pertain to St. John the Evangelist, who is the figure to the left of Christ as we're looking at it. And then on the right hand side, you've got Mary Magdalene's pot of ointment. Mary Magdalene, if you remember, not the penitent prostitute, that was Mary of Egypt, if you recall. Although Mary Magdalene's past a little bit shady, but conflated, I think. And you've got the back. So this is, as I said, probably an entombment rather than a pieta, because you've got the cloth of honour behind. So if you get closer to this image, then you would see some really fantastic details in the material. These are all real characteristics of Crivelli's work, and a little bit of trompe d'oeil as well. The cloth heading over or coming over the edge of the it's not really parapet, it's almost like a balcony or something that they seem to be on in this. So illusionism and quite linear, and these fantastic fine details. This is all Crivelli. Oh. And I have to say that probably it's only in the digital age that that people have been traumatized by this image, because obviously way back when this was in fact an altarpiece, no one would have been able to get close enough, and also this really works as in its weirdness by being taken out of context. Okay, right. Now, if you've got children anywhere near around or anywhere near you, distract them now, because you might not want them to see this image, okay? Just saying. So we come to our last image, which is definitely not an altarpiece, although it does include a nun. There we go. So this is the one that I put up on my stories. This isn't a real live event. I'm just going to let you adjust your eyes, and you might just want to have a little look at what the cat has in its mouth. Excuse me. This is satire. A pure and simply satire. You'll be pleased to hear nobody was injured in the production or the setting up or the modelling of this engraving. So what have we got? So we've got a rather dejected looking nun who is shuffling around in her slippers, if you please, holding out a fish. And why is she holding out a fish? Well, she's trying to bribe this cat to exchange what the cat has in its mouth for the fish that she's holding out. And what the cat has in his mouth is something that is clearly of great interest to her. I mean, it is a rather marvellous, I have to say, specimen of its kind. And it seems that the nun collects this type of thing, because if you just take a look at her rosary, and where she would normally have a cross on the end of her rosary, looks a little bit like another example of this collector's item that she is so desperate to get her hands on. At the bottom of the image, we have something that makes things begin to make sense, although I think the kind of the inscription is slightly superfluous, because I think it's pretty obvious what the nun wants, isn't it? But at the bottom the inscription reads Fleisch macht Fleisch, or that translates as flesh is flesh, or meat is meat. And the German for penis is a slang word for penis was Fleisch, meat. So that kind of plays in with that. But it's really the date that gives us the best clue as to what this is really all about and why we know it's satirical. We also know it's satirical because we have this this funny little fool or jester in in the window. He is, in fact, I'll come on to this in a minute, but he's no, let's do it now. He's dangling underpants. So he's dangling his underpants out of the window. And I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking, okay, so how do those underpants work? And I'm not entirely sure myself. I found this image, it's a bit gratuitous maybe. I found this image, which is a sort of demonstration of how medieval or 15th century underpants might be tied up, but that doesn't seem to conform with what we can see here. So I'm thinking that possibly the leg goes through one hole and then the other bit is sort of tied to the side like a bikini. I'm not sure. Answers on a postcard. If anyone wants to have a little go, then be my guest. So he's dangling his underpants out of the window, probably to show us that this is a satire. But coming back to what I was saying, which was I was talking about the date on the bottom. You can see it better here, 1555. So 1555 was the middle of the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation. So this is a northern work. This was made probably somewhere around what we now call the Netherlands. It's in the Rijksmuseum today. So this is a pop at Catholics. basically, and it's a pop more specifically at the fact that Catholic nuns, priests had to remain chaste, and the Protestants were like, well, that's just not, that's just not normal. We were made to procreate, within a loving marriage. Then this is what we should be doing, and if we're not allowed to do that or aren't able to do that, then these the desires will come out somewhere else and come out inappropriately, and there isn't much more inappropriateness than a nun shuffling around in her slippers, trying to steal a disembodied penis from a cat, is there? I mean, I think that's I'm gonna say this is possibly a new low in Elevenses. I don't know, what do you think? So anyway, political satire, who knew? The jester is telling us that this is most definitely satire, or perhaps he's kind of, because he's looking at the nun rather invitingly, so perhaps he's kind of saying to her, you know what, if you don't get what you need from the cat, I'm available. Nice. Yeah, a bit of a Hobson's choice, that one, isn't it? Is that the right use of that? Anyway, on that happy note, I will see you next Thursday at 11 o'clock, and thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.